There's a million great ideas out there. And once you start something, everybody ring up and say, hey, you really ought to think about doing this. They may be right, but it's about focus, being myopically focused on what you're trying to accomplish.
Welcome, everyone, to this Liberty Ventures podcast. My name is Alexander McCobin, founder and general partner of Liberty Ventures. And as we continue to grow the ecosystem of purpose-driven investors and entrepreneurs aligned on advancing a free and prosperous future, I am super excited to be talking with Frank Trotter today, who has been an incredible business leader and investor in so many different areas. We were talking about a few of his projects just before this call, but the one that he's starting up and really focusing on now is a new bank called BattleBank that I'm sure we're going to spend a lot of time on. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help build out this Liberty Ventures ecosystem.
Well, I'm sure excited to be here. It sounds like a great opportunity for you and for the people that are following you and all the different ventures that'll be coming down the road. We're excited to see how it pans out.
And I'm excited to see how BattleBank grows. But before we get into that, I want to start by just providing context for everyone and ask if you're willing to share your story with us for a couple of minutes. Just what's happened in your life that's led to who you are and what you spend your time on these days.
I've got a lot of years to go over, but I'll keep it really brief. As our partner in BattleBank, Rick Rule, often says, 70 years gives you a lot of time to think about things. But I think you'd have to say, whether it, high school, college, was, not a particularly good student, not very focused, probably could have suggested that the 12 concussions by the time I was 21 had some impact, but, there are probably other things involved.
Was that football or what?
You name it: pole vaulting, ice hockey, rugby, bicycles, trees, slides, a lot of different pieces of that puzzle. We were laughing about that on our all hands team call the other day at BattleBank. But after school, I was actually had the fantasy of becoming an international Formula One driver, and was over in England at the time. And back in the days when people wrote letters and sent packages, a friend, you'll appreciate this, sent me a copy of Atlas Shrugged. And I think I still have the old copy and read it. And, I think there's a lot of credit to moving forward with that. Came back eventually, went to grad school, and then started with a bank that was highly entrepreneurial named Mark Twain Banks way back when, 1981. And we were obsessively entrepreneurial. And I think it was a great environment to learn and grow. And we ultimately started a few businesses that we really even will carry on at BattleBank. We stayed with that till the mid 1990s. Sold that. Ultimately, it was big fish eating littler fish sort of thing, and that ultimately ends up at U.S. Bank up in Minneapolis. Left there, and with a few people, Vinny Amato, who's also a partner in BattleBank, David Galland, who ran the New Orleans Investment Conference for Jim Blanchard for many years, was our director of marketing, and Robbie Forager, who actually just sold his latest company, Next Capital, to Goldman Sachs, apparently for a pile of money, undisclosed. But we started something called Everbank. And that was a lot of fun. We allowed people, even at Mark Twain Banks, we allowed people to buy and sell precious metals, had foreign currency deposits, global investing, and so on. And we carried a lot of that on at Everbank. Grew that very well, ultimately went public in 2012 and sold the company to TIAA in 2016. Retired, and I flunked that, although we had a great time with it. We're out here in Colorado a lot of time. You can kind of see some of the stuff in the background here. And we're out, hiking, mountain biking, snow skiing, skinning, hitting the river. The Colorado River is just down valley here a little way. So it's kind of a perfect place to be. And then, of course, we came to BattleBank, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that down the road. I don't know if that's a good kickoff to where I've been and who I am, but I'm sure there are a couple other elements that we can talk about at your leisure.
There's a lot to tease out from that, but the first I have to start with is just, being an entrepreneur is difficult enough, and running an established bank is difficult enough. It's an incredibly regulated industry. There aren't that many that get started there. Being an entrepreneur and starting new banks, which you've done a number of times now, is an unusual path, it seems to me. Why did you choose to do that in the first place? And let's start there, then I've got more to ask.
Well, I think a little bit of it came from, I think there are family memes that grow. We all kind of focus on genetics. I've always sort of thought about families as having more ways of thinking about things. And over the years, apparently, I obviously didn't know the great greats, had sort of this attitude about getting things done. Grandfather may have started the first auto finance uh, company back in the early teens for the Kempers up in Kansas City. Um, Stuff like that, and you sort of have a viewpoint of that you pick up from your family. And I think that was enhanced by my time at Mark Twain Banks. As I mentioned, we were hyper entrepreneurial. It was encouraged to do things. And it was an era of banking where you didn't have to put an application in and wait, a year or two for something to come back. You just did it and then rang up the regulators later and said, "This is what we're doing." Um, and we were able to do a lot of that. So we sort of grew up in this environment, kind of a Camelot environment of very, smart, entrepreneurial, aggressively interesting people. And I think it was starting the businesses we did there just seemed like the natural thing to do. And that was our international markets division doing precious metals and foreign currencies when nobody else did. Um, Ultimately, in the 90s, we actually launched something called eCash, which is the first digital payment system. It was a peer-to-peer, irrevocable, anonymized system developed by David Chaum at DigiCash, but it was, a good 15 years too early. The iPhone, as you may know, didn't launch till 2008, and we were out. Windows actually launched a couple months before we launched eCash. So being a little too early, if not massively too early, was just part of the game. So I think you just have an attitude that if you sit down, try to work through stuff, and build things, that's the way you should do life. And a lot of people just want to show up and do a job. I certainly look at you as an entrepreneur. Many of the people, obviously, on Liberty Ventures probably are as well. And it's just a different attitude about life. I think you grow up with that a little bit, or you develop it down the road when that light bulb comes on.
And it's something that you keep working on as you're an entrepreneur because there's no amount of studying that's going to prepare you for it. It's something that you have to experience and learn from through that. So I'm wondering if you can share any of your experiences as an entrepreneur, some of the challenges that you faced and lessons you've learned from that, that would be helpful for anyone else who's beginning their journey or is still on it and looking to grow.
Well, I think, there are so many elements that depending on what you're doing. Obviously, I don't know, probably couldn't be a tech entrepreneur, maybe. I haven't thought about that for a long time. I did used to code back in the day, but that thankfully has gone away. But I think it's a little bit about um, being myopically focused on what you're trying to accomplish. There's a million great ideas out there, and once you start something, everybody's chipping in, whether it's a friend, a business colleague, people on the internet these days ring up and say, "Hey, you really ought to think about doing this," and they may be right, but it's about focus. Sitting down, building the process, and I think one of the things we've always learned is um, front to back fulfillment and development is critical. I mean, you can have a great idea out front. We've certainly seen a lot of companies lately that have very good ideas, but they don't have the whole process put together. And they may fail because of maybe customer service. Maybe they fail because of fulfillment of their product. Maybe it just doesn't ring. And there are so many things, despite the fact that, the those most likely to survive are the ones that will survive. There are a lot of really bad things that get out there, and there's some great things that fail. So you really just have to, maintain that focus, understand the client that you're trying to serve or the market you're trying to serve, and just stay obsessive about that market, and don't let other people sort of jump in and say, "Well, you got to do these other 10 things," because it's just about getting the main thing done and then spreading out and doing other things down the road.
And this is one of the most common problems for entrepreneurs. If you want to start something new, you commonly like to start a lot of different things at the same time. You get excited about new ideas. So it's a real discipline to actually start saying no and remain focused there. I'm wondering if there's any technique that you've used or way that you've been able to say no to all of the opportunities so that you can focus on what really matters for your businesses.
Well, I think a lot of that's team. It's kind of a joke. I've People have way back at Mark Twain, they sent me a little placard that said "No new products" with a slash through it. Vinny Amato, our director of operations here at BattleBank and at Everbank, had similar verbal versions of that with many colorful adjectives in the middle of it. Do not do any more. And I think it really is. It's just about focus. What are you really trying to deliver? Is that actually going to enhance your offering? And it may, but does it conflict with or provide a distraction um, to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? And we have people calling us every day at Battle with new lending products. You want to buy my bank, you want to do this, and uh, you just have to say that's a great idea. Why don't you call us in 24 months? It may or may not be on their agenda to do that. And that's fine. We're not controlling their agenda. And I think that's another lesson is, you control your own agenda. You don't let other people drive that. In our world, of course, regulators drive some of it. You have to do this, that, or the other on a particular day, week, or month. But really, you maintain your own agenda, listen to people. There's some great ideas out there, and some of them have merit. But again, it's all about focus. And some of my colleagues might suggest I need a little more, but that's why you have a great team. If everybody in the team has a voice, has the ability to make a serious comment or input, and have a discussion as opposed to a dictatorial situation, I think that works best.
Because as much as the founding entrepreneur is a driver for the business, it's not done by one person. It is about having the best people around you who are all deeply committed and focused, as you're saying, to building the business up.
Yep. And that's really the key is, people who will do that. And we also respect, personal lives too. It's business, there's a lot of talk out there, but that the current generations are a little more focused on, their own personal fulfillment. And, maybe there's a little too much of that some days. But on the other hand, I think it's not a bad idea. We like to have a team that is very professional, understands what they're supposed to do, and then goes and does it on their own. I don't have a weekly check-in with you every week to see if you've gotten your job done. I assume you're getting it done, and if you don't, we'll talk about it. You better tell me that you didn't get it done. And it's about having serious professionals who also have the attitude about building things, understand where the boundaries are, understand what the task is, and understand what the goals are. And yeah, maybe somebody in every organization is kind of the spiritual leader, but um, it's got to be a group. There are very few businesses you can do all by yourself.
So that's all really good advice, and let's use that to talk about BattleBank now. But before we talk about the bank, why did you come out of retirement for this? What did you see as the gap in the market or the innovation that you wanted to bring to the table that led to this?
Well, I think one of the things, we thought we had built a pretty interesting business at Everbank, focused on a very tightly defined target market, a pretty unique set of products. And when TIAA purchased the institution, it's their money. They had a different objective. They have over 1 million retirees that depend on them. And Andrew Carnegie started that business to help teachers in retirement who were generally being destitute in the early 1900s. So it was a good mission. And your teachers, college professors, firemen, all sorts of people depend on TIA for retirement. But it wasn't our target market. And as they drifted away from that, as they served their own community, we started looking at that, saying, maybe there's a big chance to come back in here. And got to talking to Rick Rule, who is sort of watching that from the Sprott side of life as well. he was a big fan of EverBank. As you probably know, we kind of had our very first meeting in Rick's house out in California with the EverBank team that ultimately built the bank. So he was in there from the very beginning, and we said, we think that there's just a hole we could drive a truck through. Get this up and running. People are interested. And of course, the big box banks are continuing to indulge us by not paying interest and charging high fees. Um, so, when we started EverBank, we kind of looked out at the landscape and saw that happening. Amazingly, it's still in place. If you look at the big 5 or 6 banks, all of them are paying less than almost zero and charging high fees to low balance customers. And it just makes it so easy to go back in and provide a great value, a great service, an easy way to access it. And we thought that would be an opportunity. And dragging out of retirement, of course, I'm sure I thought I was going to be hiking half the day every day still. Not the case. But it's one of those things you figure you're going to get it all done easily. But we're still able to live a pretty comfortable place out here in Colorado. Definitely get up in the mountains all the time. So it's a good balance of entrepreneurial spirit and being in the mountains.
So I love that. And you touched on one of the big gaps or one of the challenges in the banking industry right now that I've certainly seen, and I know others do see, where the big banks are offering very low interest rates, if any at all, for people, and there are high fees. But what else were you seeing? What else drove you with this, if anything?
Well, I think our target market, which is that independent investor, self-directed investor, probably listening to podcasts, watching YouTube, reading newsletters, and is really an independent thinker. They're not typically the individual that just turns the money over to a registered investment advisor and says, "Tell me about it in 4 or 5 years." They're in the market, they're looking, they're interested, and there are a lot of difficulties in doing what they want to do. There are plenty of places to buy gold and silver, but we feel that doing it in a similar way, in a very cost-effective way, very secure way, is important to people. The foreign currency deposits. It's very difficult to do that unless you go overseas. You can go to Zurich, and if they'll let you open an account, you can do that. But it's tough, and we want to give people that opportunity. And we want to give people the opportunity to have follow the themes that they really want to follow. I can buy an S&P index fund from 50 different manufacturers. Nothing special about that. But I can't do a principal protected market index CD that follows gold and silver. It just doesn't show up with other people. So we try to listen to our customer base, see what they want to do, and then try to deliver it to us. And that's kind of our version of product manufacturing, which isn't putting 30 checking accounts out there so you can't figure out which one you should have. It's having one place to put your cash that is high value, low fees, easy to use, and then providing other opportunities for people. One of Rick's favorite sayings is he's 70, overweight, out of shape, but he can win the 100-yard dash if nobody else shows up. We're trying to go into some of those areas where people aren't showing up, but there's a demand. And that can be for a wide variety of reasons. We can't compete with JP Morgan Chase on a lot of things, and they can't compete with us. A lot of their businesses have to have such large scale to make a difference. If you want to even get on the quarterly report, Jamie Dimon's desk has got to be pretty big. We can fill those gaps in the smaller businesses because we have highly sophisticated team members that can answer questions for people and entrepreneurs that wouldn't otherwise be answered. Maybe you have a good local bank that can do that, and more power to you. When we were down at Boca Raton, we first asked, does anybody there love their bank? And one guy put his hand up and came up to me afterwards and said, "I love my bank." And the following reason, I said, "That's fantastic because they're doing what they should be doing." But in our surveys and in the audience, it's typically 70 to 80% of the people that say they don't like their bank, literally don't like it, actively don't like it. So I think that is just something that needs to be solved. Listen to the clients, deliver on the promise, provide great products, and hopefully that little mix of things draws some people in.
So you've already started to touch on what you're doing differently with BattleBank, but if you were to encapsulate it in a paragraph for everyone here, what are you doing with BattleBank?
Um, Providing high value, low fees, access to the global marketplace, and easy access to individuals that can help you make decisions, which is really what a bank should do. It's safe and secure. We're not stretching out on the, not borrowing short, lending long, which seemed to be popular up through February of this year. Um, and it's really providing a secure place where you can get done what you need to get done at a very fair rate.
Now, when you say get access to people to help you make decisions, what does that look like for you guys? What are some of the decisions? How are you helping your customers out with that?
I think a couple different things. We do, a lot of companies today sort of make you hunt for that toll-free number. If you have a question, maybe you have chat, we'll have chat, that'll be fine. But if somebody has a question, our view has always been that we have not somebody just straight out of school trying to read off a script, but we hire highly experienced people, a lot more expensive, but it's a highly concentrated group of folks, you know, that can answer the question because they've done the transaction to have that question happen to them 1,000 times, 10,000 times before. Our original client services center at Everbank was out on Long Island. So instead of having an hour and a half commute on the Long Island Railroad every day into town and then an hour and a half back out of town, dressed in a three-piece suit from some, Broadway branch. Now they can come in and, Dockers and a polo shirt, get on the phone with people and help them out because they've been the branch manager for 20 years. They know what they're doing. And in particular, in that can help. Number two, you have our global markets people who are highly experienced in the global markets. People will call up and say, "What do you think about the euro? Should I consider the Australian dollar? How about the Chinese renminbi?" And these folks are in the market all day, every day. And we're not giving advice, we're providing information for the client to make their decision. So you give that deep understanding of whatever you're about to do. Then on the retirement side, with the checkbook IRAs and the solo 401ks, it's how do I set this up? What are some of the things I need to consider? How do I make this happen? And how do I do what I want to do? At the end of the day, when you're talking to a company, even if you're just buying something off Amazon, you're there to do something. And you need to gain the knowledge that's necessary to do that. And whether that's researching what's the best toaster or making a decision about a good investment decision, or how you want to borrow money. You want to hear from somebody who knows what they're talking about, not just giving you a stock answer off a script, and can actually have a conversation with you about what you're trying to do and what's the best way to accomplish it. Rick has an example. He goes into won't say the bank name, a branch of a major bank near his home, and he'll ask them a question, and they'll point to a white phone on the desk and say, "Call there." They'll know. We concentrate this knowledge into our client services group. There'll be a group on Long Island, but in the modern world, of course, a lot of people will be remote. So they're, again, understanding the business, understanding how to get things done, and then communicating that back out to individuals. And I think that's incredibly important, not to just be solely online with just stock answers stuck in the middle of an application. If you have a problem, call. You have something you need to do, call. It's great. We love that.
Now, you've mentioned the global markets a few times already, and I know that you've done a lot of international business, but for a lot of American investors and entrepreneurs, the US does seem to be the boundaries for their worldview. Why did you start thinking about the global markets to begin with, and why are you emphasizing that so much here as an opportunity?
Well, I think, the very beginnings, which were in the 1980s, was an incredibly different rate environment. When I started banking in 1981, 3-month treasury bills, I think were at 17%. Prime was at 21 and a half. The 30-year treasury was at 15. Still a little bit of an inverted curve. And you had places like New Zealand, it was paying 27% on a 3-month deposit. that is a very, very different environment. So people thought they would like the opportunity to buy some of these things. And we put a process in place to allow them to do it. And I think today, many people, the dollar has kind of been king literally since I left EverBank in 2016. And the euro has been pretty much the same place over that entire period. But we have a viewpoint, and I think a lot of our clients have a viewpoint that they'd like to diversify their cash. And it's really about diversifying your cash. You wouldn't just own IBM or Google these days. You own a mutual fund that has many, many different elements in it. Same sort of thing for your cash. You should have precious metals, you should have some foreign currencies, and you can vary that allocation from time to time. It's part of a diversified portfolio. And we don't view it as a speculation, we view it as a diversification. If you want to speculate in currencies, there's plenty of platforms that let you do that. It's not our business. If you want to be in there for an intermediate to long-term period of time, and we've had people rolling Swiss franc CDs with us since the 1980s. So it's a long-term diversification, and I think it's worked out well for many people. I think you look at the U.S. debt, if you look at the U.S. fiscal policy with both parties, unfortunately, it's not great. And it's an opportunity if some other part of the world, maybe you don't want to go to China right now. They're kind of in a what looks to be in a sort of recessionary situation. But down the road, Europe or maybe Australia. Australia is really just a gigantic commodity creation country. And if you think commodities are going to be strong over the next 5 to 10 years, you might want to have some Australian dollars. Good examples of a couple of rationales. People do buy Brazilian real, as we joked beforehand. Brazil is always going to be the next greatest economy. It just may never get there. But maybe the Brazilian currency is something you want to hold as well. So it's really an opportunity to diversify, gain interest in some cases, and in other cases you gain capital gains, obviously with a risk of loss. But in the long run, I think it's probably a good diversification to have, and many people have benefited very heavily from having the currencies in their portfolio.
Well,
And at the same time, the precious metals, obviously, a lot of the people we talk to, are very interested in gold and silver, and sometimes platinum, palladium. Is that real money? I think it's a great point that many people make. It's certainly been a storehouse of value for only the last 3,000 to 5,000 years, as far as I know. And it's a good place to put a portion of a portfolio. And people want to do it with somebody who's secure. They want to store it with somebody who's secure if they're going to store it with somebody. We kind of joke there are a lot of mom and pop precious metals dealers with the store, the storage upstairs over the store. It's probably not what I'd like. People can live with it, so be it. It's up to them. It's a free world. But we have strong storage. We have also regulated, which we don't like some days, but we love when we can tell people, there are a lot of people looking over our shoulder. So that stuff's there, and it's going to be there when you need it down the road. And of course, we ship that out to people as well for those who want to do midnight gardening or put it in a storage facility that they're well aware of. So it's about access to these markets. It's about diversification, and it's about opportunity that the client sees and how to fulfill that opportunity.
Frank, this has been so insightful. Thank you so much. I just have one last question for you, which is, my philosophy is always that if you want to connect with someone, you want to get into an industry, you want to learn about something, the worst thing to do is to ask for something. The best thing to do is to offer something, to give something to the other person. And so I'm wondering if anyone listening to this wants to learn more, wants to help out, wants to connect with you, and were to reach out and say, I want to help you do this. I want to offer this for you. What would catch your attention and get you to respond?
Well, that's a great question. It's always kind of fun to think about stuff like that. On the personal side, of course, it's always, where's that trail I haven't done, or is there a special spot on Vail Mountain that I need to know about between the runs? We can certainly talk about that. On the business side, we get pitches all day, every day. So it's not like everybody's got a great idea and they want to put this, that, or the other into the bank. But I think it's really about, um, you know, if somebody's going to offer something, it's really how can I help you connect to a client? You know, somebody new, somebody who would be interested, somebody who would benefit from this. There's a million products out there, and there are a lot of great ones. Um, our director of operations would kill me if I added a new product right now just before we launch. He'd come down from Long Island and strike me with an iron pipe in my knee. But it's about reaching out. We've had a lot of people that have been very interesting on LinkedIn. We're posting there a couple times a week, and they're forwarding it. They're putting good ideas up there. They're actually engaging in the conversation sometimes. What's another way to reach people that would be interested? And that's really the thing that we appreciate. Uh, Not really to sell them something, but somebody that would be interested in what we're doing, and maybe engage in a conversation and have a smart idea about how to reach them, how to give them better access to something, or how to have another product or product set that would help them to achieve their objectives.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, you heard it here. That's what's best to get out to reach out to Frank. Frank, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and share all of these insights and what you're doing today. I'm really excited to see BattleBank grow and where you take this.
We love it, and thank you so much for the conversation. We had a great time.